Today I'm going to be going around Delhi a little more. I didn't expect to stay in the city this long at first. I thought I was going to come to India and head out because I do have other plans, other places, but things keep popping up. And I didn't get to see the Red Fort yesterday. This is probably the second most famous thing in India after the Taj Mahal. So I'm going to go in there, check it out. There is a museum included. It's kind of expensive to get in here. It was like 950 rupees, like ridiculous prices compared to what the Indian people are paying. But it is their country, it is their heritage, so it makes sense that it's cheaper. Also, most foreigners, if you can afford to get to India, you know, you can afford to pay the prices. So let's go check it out, see what's in there. Every time I go to one of these tourist attractions, there's lots of people that want to take pictures with me, which is working out really great because then I get to show them the YouTube channel. So if you're watching this, that might be how you got here, and I appreciate you. I'm finding it very difficult to find somebody who speaks English right here, but they have the front of this decorated up. There's an elephant made out of flowers. Everything that you see, all this decoration is made out of flowers. Don't know why. It's got the year 2020 in it, and then some writing. Hopefully somebody who's watching this can read that, and then they'll let us all know down in the comments what this is all about. But I talked to a few people. They did not speak English. So there you go. Actually, some people just told me it was done for Independence Day. So they were watching me when I was videoing, so that helped me a lot. There you go. That's for Independence Day, 15th August. That's why they put this up here. The entrance of this place is grand, to say the least. It's huge. You see, obviously it is a fort, so, you know, lots of layers of walls that you gotta get through. But, oh wow, it's very crowded here. It's so huge. Little market inside as soon as you come in. All your tourist needs. Every one of these little areas is filled up with shops now, which is cool. Gives a little life. So actually, contrary to what I thought, this area wasn't like just a walkway that's filled in with shops. It's actually designed to be filled with shops. It's something that was made during the Mughal Empire. They're the actual ones who put it in there. Apparently it was very rare to have covered markets like this back then. But there you go. Here's an example of one. If you want to come check it out, you should. It's probably the coolest place I've been so far in 2 days. So maybe it'll get beat, we'll see. Maybe I'm setting the bar really high. This area behind me is called a Nabut Khana, which basically it would be here and it would announce the arrival of the emperor every time that he would come in. They would have professional musicians who would just play a song to show, you know, emperor's here, everybody, you know, get ready for it or whatever that means. It's situated directly across from the entrance that I came in through. It also said that 2 separate Mughal rulers actually were assassinated here during, or at the end of their reigns, I guess. So 2 different Mughal emperors actually died here because of assassins. I guess that means you can't trust musicians all the time, huh? So I don't know why, but you see the tape here. A lot of stuff is just kind of closed off. It has like a police tape on it. It's kind of like that all over the city. I don't really get it. Maybe it's a thing related to the Independence Day. But beautiful square here at the Red Fortress. So this is where the Shah, or the Mughal ruler, would receive his audiences. This is where he'd meet with people. This is his public meeting place, basically. And there's the musician's house. So you see it's all just a straight line to here, which would be, I assume, his throne where he would sit when people would come to see him in public. It's very ornate, but there's a horrible glare that I know will make it impossible for you guys to see. It's really great everywhere you go in India at these UNESCO Heritage sites, because this is my third of 3 in New Delhi actually. there's always lots and lots of Indian people actually out here enjoying something, you know, that I think is really nice to see. And right here in the middle, the center of the fortress, or the fort, there is a giant fountain that they had to set up regarding the water stuff right here. So this canal actually, according to this plaque right here, said basically having this water running, constantly flowing throughout this area, it basically acted as a as air conditioner, because the water was constantly flowing and the air would basically blow across it and it would cool the air down. And yeah, it was basically like an old style of air conditioning they use out here in the open. You know, you gotta be rich even nowadays to air condition the outdoors. So these guys did it. So as somebody who actually loves history a whole lot, and especially military history, being in a fortress complex like this is actually really interesting to me. You know, I've been to a few in Europe now. I've been to plenty all over North America, you know, and in Latin America and in, you know, the United States. And it's really great getting into here to see like the huge difference in Indian fortifications to European ones. I think the British Army would later take over this place, so it would be used by Europeans, but it was definitely and was completely built by Mughals, you know. Just more examples of huge amount of detail that would go into the artworks that would adorn basically the outdoors of a lot of these places. It's important to remember that this fortress didn't just serve as a military fort, it also was the residence of the Mughals for the majority of their reign over northern India. So this mosque behind me was actually made by Moti Masjid, who just wanted it. And literally, it was built just because a guy wanted to be able to pray closer to where he slept, where he lived, and that's it. And that's pretty cool. And it's for buildings that are in the fort, it's pretty humble, it's pretty small, but I'm sure inside it's probably very ornate and crazy, just like everything else here. So over to my left here, you can see the grandeur of these huge, they look much more modern, way more modern than a lot of the other stuff here. And I don't know definitively, right? But I would venture a guess that these were actually probably built during the British times when they were actually out here occupying India, because it looks like a much more modern style. That was more people who wanted to take pictures with me. But yeah, I would venture that these are probably British constructions, just because they look very different than the majority of the things that you'd see here made actually in India by Indians. That was my guess. I could be totally off the mark on this, I could be totally wrong, but that's one thing. Oh wow, there's a ton of birds right now. I do not know if you guys can see that, but there's a lot of them. I think they're just pigeons though. All of this is still part of that canal system for the air conditioning that we read about earlier. And it's crazy because we're on the complete opposite side of the park area, like the garden area, and it's still like huge intricate thing. So behind me you have the museum here at the Red Fort, and in it brings up two main things. So the top floor is basically dedicated to massacres that happened during India's independence movement. I'm going to splice in right here two different things I recorded when I was in there, showing basically the death tolls of these two separate massacres that happened. But also on the bottom floor, it really calls in mind and talks about the First World War and how that actually affected India hugely, right? So in the First World War, the majority of soldiers that would have fought in a lot of theaters, especially in like the Middle East, in the Mesopotamian and Levantine theaters of war, right, would have been Indian troops. Even in Gallipoli, a large portion of Indian troops would end up landing there. So all across the Ottoman Empire, they would have Indian troops fighting. But because there were so many Indian soldiers, they also were used, of course, in the Western theater of war, where they would end up in the trenches just alongside any other European army, you know, like the French, the Americans, the Belgians, and the British were all out there. But during the war, the Indian soldiers actually were given 11 Victoria Crosses, which are the highest medal that you can earn while in service of His or Her Majesty. At the time it was His majesty of the United Kingdom. That being said, it was only 3 years before the war actually started that Indians were actually even allowed to earn that medal. They did not allow people from the Indian subcontinent to get the medal before 1911. So, that being said, India made huge contributions, not only in the First World War, but it doesn't really talk about it here, but in the Second World War, also in North Africa and in the Ethiopian and East African campaigns, there would be a lot of Indian troops who would serve there and fight for the British. Also, there would be plenty that would fight in the Italian campaign. I don't know about in Western Europe off the top of my head. I'm sure some did end up there. I know Indian pilots probably flew or serviced aircraft at least in Battle of Britain. And that's just speaking of the Western theater. Obviously in the Eastern theater, there would be huge contributions by the Indians. They would fight for Singapore, they'd fight in the East Indies, they would fight in Burma, they'd fight in India a little bit. Hopefully we'll get there later on down the trip. But huge areas that the Indians would fight in the world wars. They made a huge impact. That's something that can't be forgotten. They also have a museum that talks about the Mughals and their impact on this place. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff in there. So I definitely recommend if you come out here and you're a tourist, even though it does almost double the price, it brings it from, I think it's like 600 to like 950 if you're a foreigner, rupees to get in here. It's definitely worth paying for the museums and coming and checking these out.